Long ago, before the mortal realm had taken its current shape, Ibiru had been a god of progress and invention, a skill that runs in his celestial family. He was not a warrior, nor a leader, but a builder, a creator of wonders that defied comprehension. The stars themselves bore witness to his genius, as his creations illuminated the heavens and brought order to the chaos of the cosmos. But Ibiru's brilliance was also his undoing. In his pursuit of perfection, he had created something that should never have existed, a machine so powerful that it threatened to unravel the fabric of reality itself. It was a machine that could convert energies and at some threshold could be converted to source energy, which is the same material that the human soul is made of. Ibiru had done this to reduce the violent in the mortal world, as this was a time of war and genocide among the mortals. When elder gods took sides and supported the mortals that prayed to them the most, Ibiru discovered that the cause of violence and war is due to the dark emotions like greed, fear, anger, and he thought to himself, what if these emotions can be converted? Just like the energy humans give out from their soul when they pray, what if these negative energies could be extracted and converted to positive energies? And so he began building. But the elder gods did not like this. They needed humans in despair and anger and greed so that human can turn to them and pray to them for help. This is because the prayer of a mortal contains part of their soul which serves as power for these elder gods. They were not ready to give up on a wonderful and powerful resources. The elder gods, furious and fearful, turned on him. They cast him down, stripping him of his divine standing and banishing him to the void. They did not want the rise of another Madinga, the god who threatened their existence and power in the past. It was Ayla who found him there, broken and alone, his creation scattered and forgotten. She saw not the folly of his mistakes, but the potential of his mind. She reached out to him, offering him a chance to create again, not through punishment, but through service. "Come with me," she had said, her voice gentle yet firm. "Serve the earth, and I will give you purpose once more." From that day forward, Ibiru had devoted himself entirely to Allah. He became her most loyal servant, using his gifts to aid her in protecting the balance of the world. Under her guidance, he created technologies that bridged the divine and mortal realms, empowering humanity in ways that ensured their survival. For centuries, Ibiru traveled the mortal realm in disguise, teaching his knowledge to those chosen by Allah. He appeared as a master craftsman, taking on apprentices from the Igbo kingdom and guiding them in the ways of invention. The tools and methods he shared were gifts from Allah, carefully chosen to uplift without corrupting. To Ibiru, Allah was not just his queen, she was his redeemer, his savior. Now, as he stood before the restrained beast, his expression was one of quiet fascination. He moved closer, his hands gesturing in fluid motions as his devices floated around him, scanning the creature's core. "This is remarkable," Ibiru murmured, his voice tinged with both awe and concern. "The fragment has shaped this beast entirely. Its form, its strength, it's all drawn from the energy of the orb." Allah nodded. "Can it be deactivated?" Ibiru's hands moved faster, his devices humming softly as they analyzed the fragment. "The energy is ancient, older than most of the gods," he said. "But it is not indestructible. If we can disrupt its connection to the orb, we can neutralize it." "And can you do that?" Ogun asked, his tone skeptical. Ibiru glanced at him, a faint smile on his lips. "With time, yes. But this will not be simple. The fragment's energy is deeply intertwined with the beast's essence. Separating them without destroying both will require precision." Allah placed a hand on Ibiru's shoulder, her gaze steady. "You have always found a way, Ibiru. I trust you will find one now." Ibiru bowed his head. "I will not fail you, my queen." As he turned back to the beast, his devices shifting and rearranging themselves with intricate precision, A new presence began to approach Ayla's realm. Orunmila was coming. The mirrored plains of Akaru had become unrecognizable, the once pristine surface now scarred by deep fissures and glowing with residual energy from the clash of gods. Amadioha stood tall, his body radiating a fierce, violet glow, his purple lightning crackling violently around him. Shango, bloodied but grinning, rose from a crater he had created upon impact, his red lightning flickering across his axe like molten veins of power. For the first time, Amadioha fully unleashed the strength that the elder gods feared. The purple lightning coursed through him, not as a tool, but as an extension of his being, its destructive might shaking the very core of Akaru. He moved with precision, his hand rising as Shango lunged. With a flick of his fingers, Shango was pulled into the air, suspended by an invisible force. Amadioha's eyes gleamed as his newfound telekinesis locked onto Shango's form. "You're powerful, Shango," he said, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of thunder. But power without precision is chaos. Before Shango could respond, a torrent of purple lightning surged upward, slamming into him mid-air. The force sent ripples across the battlefield, the energy so intense that Akaru's reflective surface dimmed under its strain. Shango roared, not in pain, but exhilaration, even as his body was thrown backward. But Amadioha wasn't finished. With a motion as smooth as a tide, he pulled Shango down with his telekinesis, slamming him into the ground. The impact sent shockwaves tearing through the planet, the cracks beneath their feet widening. Yet Shango laughed. His voice echoed across the battlefield, wild and joyous. "Yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Show me more, Thunderer." Amadioha's brow furrowed, his expression betraying a flicker of frustration. This was the power that had cowed elder gods, the force that could end entire pantheons. And yet, here was Shango, reveling in it, growing stronger with every strike. As the fight continued, Shango's adaptation became evident. His movements grew sharper, more fluid, his strikes faster and more precise. The red lightning that surged from his body now clashed evenly with Amadioha's purple, the two divine forces crackling in a furious dance of light and sound. Each clash released shockwaves that rippled across Akaru's surface, the planet groaning under the weight of their powers. Amadioha's focus sharpened. He could see the toll the battle was taking, not just on the planet, but on both of them. Their breaths came heavier, their movements fractionally slower. Divine power was not infinite, and they were nearing their limits. But Amadioha had no intention of letting this battle drag on. He began to channel his energy, the purple lightning coiling around him in spiraling arcs. The air grew heavy, vibrating with the promise of an attack that could end it all. Shango noticed the shift immediately. His grin faded, replaced by a look of steely determination. He raised his osha, the axe glowing brighter as he poured his own energy into it. The weapon pulsed with red lightning, its edges crackling with lethal intent. "So you're finally getting serious," Shango said, his voice low but tinged with excitement. "Good. I've been waiting for this." Before Amadioha could strike, Shango acted. With a speed that defied comprehension, he hurled the osha at Amadioha. The axe moved faster than the speed of light, a streak of crimson energy cutting through the air. But to Shango's shock, Amadioha dodged it. For the first time in the battle, Shango's confidence wavered. He had been certain, absolutely certain, that Amadioha wouldn't be able to react in time. The osha had never missed before. Amadioha's eyes narrowed, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "You thought that would work?" Shango's grip on his power faltered, but his mind raced. How had Amadioha evaded an attack at that speed? The answer lay in Amadioha's gaze, which glowed faintly with a new intensity. For the first time, Amadioha had activated a skill he had long possessed but never needed to use, a glimpse into the future. As he prepared his finishing move, the skill had triggered, showing him the split second in which Shango's Osha would have severed his arm. Amadioha had reacted accordingly, shifting just enough to avoid the strike entirely. The battlefield fell silent. Shango stood motionless, his hands clenching and unclenching as he processed what had just happened. For the first time since the battle began, he was genuinely shocked. "You," Shango began, his voice softer, almost awed. "You dodged it." Amadioha didn't respond. He held his stance, his purple lightning crackling ominously around him. For a moment, neither god moved, but even in the stillness, they both felt it, the shifting of the planet's core. Akaru, the indestructible arena, was reaching its limit. Its surface remained stable, but deep below, the energy it had absorbed was beginning to tear it apart. The silence between them spoke volumes. They had pushed each other further than they had ever been pushed before. For all their differences, they now understood each other in a way no one else could. Both gods were exhausted. Their breaths came heavy, their divine energies flickering faintly as their reserves dwindled, but neither was willing to back down. Amadioha's mind raced. He had one ace left, the source power he had unlocked with Orunmila's guidance, but Orunmila's warning rang in his ears. "Do not use it against Shango, the cost will be too great." Shango, too, had a final move, an attack he had kept hidden until now. The Divine Eradicator, a technique that could extract all of an opponent's power in a single blow. But Shango knew the cost. If he used it, the planet would not survive. They both knew. If either unleashed their ultimate attack, the consequences would be catastrophic. Akaru would shatter, and the ripple effect would destroy neighboring stars, planets, and even celestial bodies. But there had to be a winner. Neither would surrender. The two gods stood across from each other, their auras flickering with restrained power. The battlefield was quiet, but the air between them crackled with tension. Shango grinned, his confidence returning. "So, Thunderer," he said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "What's it going to be? Are you ready to finish this?" Amadioha didn't answer immediately. He steadied his breathing, his purple lightning glowing faintly around him. Finally he said, "Are you?" And with that, they prepared to clash one last time. Back in Allah's realm, Orunmila stood with the quiet composure of a being who had seen countless ages come and go. His arrival had been swift and deliberate, his presence commanding yet calm. Before him stood Ala, her strength evident despite the strain of recent events, and Ogun and Ikenga, their expressions a mixture of respect and concern. Ogun spoke first, his voice steady but edged with urgency. "Orunmila, you've seen what we're dealing with. The fragment is not just dangerous, it's a piece of the orb itself given form. It's alive. Ikenga nodded in agreement, his ram horns glinting faintly in the ambient light of Allah's domain. "Our investigation led us to Idemili. From there, we followed the trail to this beast, and now we're here because it's the safest place for it." Orunmila's gaze moved to the restrained creature, his expression unreadable. The beast twitched faintly, its core glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. Ibiru worked nearby, his devices humming softly as he meticulously examined the fragment's energy. Orunmila approached the beast, his steps slow and deliberate. He studied it for only a moment before speaking. This is more than I anticipated." His voice carried a weight that silenced the room. "If this fragment remains unchecked, it could destabilize not just this realm, but the balance of creation itself." Ogun crossed his arms, his tone firm. "That's why we called you. You're the only one who can make sense of this." But Orunmila's attention shifted, his eyes narrowing as if seeing something far beyond the present. "This is not the only danger we face," he said softly. "Amadioha and Shango, they are fighting on Akaru." Alla's brow furrowed, her calm demeanor giving way to concern. "You knew this would happen." "I did," Orunmila admitted, his voice steady. "But even I could not foresee how far they would push each other. The balance is already strained, and Akaru—" He paused, his gaze darkening. "Even that planet has its limits." Ogun frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Orunmila said, turning to face them, "that if their battle continues, the planet will collapse, and the resulting destruction will ripple across the cosmos." Ikenga stepped forward, his tone serious. "Then we have to stop them." Orunmila smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried centuries of wisdom. "And how do you propose we do that, Ikenga? Do you think you have the power to stand between them?" Ogun let out a dry laugh. "He's right. Those two. It'd take more than both of us to hold them back." Alla stepped closer, her voice quiet but firm. "You underestimate Orunmila. There is a reason he is who he is. If anyone can stop those two right now, it's him." Orunmila inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. "Thank you, Ayla. But there is no time to waste." With that, he turned and disappeared into a swirl of shimmering light, leaving the realm of Ayla behind. The moment Orunmila stepped onto Akaru's surface, he felt the weight of the battle. The air was thick with divine energy, the ground beneath his feet trembling as if the planet itself were crying out. In the distance, he saw them, Amadioha and Shango, poised for their final clash. Their powers surged around them, purple and red lightning crackling violently as they prepared to unleash their ultimate attacks. The energy radiating from their auras was overwhelming, shaking the very fabric of the planet. Orunmila's expression darkened. He had no time for hesitation. Closing his eyes, he raised his staff, its intricate carvings glowing with ancient power. The air around him grew still, the crackling of lightning fading into silence. He opened his mouth, chanting words in a language older than time itself, his voice resonating across the battlefield. And then time stopped. The world froze. Amadioha's purple lightning halted mid-strike, its arcs suspended in the air like jagged shards of glass. Shango's Oshe, glowing with red fury, remained inches from his grasp, the light from its edges frozen in place. The gods themselves were immobilized, their expressions locked in determination and fury. Orunmila stepped forward, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He approached Shango first, his gaze falling on the Oshi. Reaching out, he touched the tip of the axe, his fingers glowing faintly as he activated the failsafe Ogun had built into the weapon. With a soft hum, the Oshi's glow dimmed, its energy deactivated. Then, Orunmila turned to Amadioha. He placed a hand on the Thunder God's chest, his expression softening slightly. "Forgive me, my friend," he murmured. With another chant, he channeled his power into Amadioha, deactivating the flow of purple lightning that surrounded him. Stepping back, Orunmila raised his staff once more. With a single click of his fingers, time began to flow again. Amadioha and Shango collapsed to the ground, their bodies heaving with exhaustion. For a moment, they lay still, their minds struggling to process what had happened. Shango was the first to speak, his voice hoarse but tinged with humor. "What just happened?" Amadioha pushed himself up, his gaze sharp as he scanned the battlefield. His lightning was gone, the purple glow no longer flickering around him. He turned to Orunmila, his eyes narrowing. "You." Orunmila stood calmly, his staff glowing faintly. "The fight is over." Shango let out a low laugh, shaking his head as he sat up. "You're the only one who could pull something like this off, Orunmila. Stopping time. Clever. Annoying, but clever." Amadioha exhaled deeply, his frustration evident. "Do you realize how dangerous that was?" "I do," Orunmila said simply. "But the danger of letting this battle continue far outweighed the risk of my intervention." Shango grinned despite his exhaustion. You're lucky, old man. Another second, and I'd have had him. Amadioha gave Shango a sharp look but said nothing. Orunmila's expression remained steady. Both of you are extraordinary. You have pushed each other to limits neither of you thought possible. But this clash must end here. The balance cannot afford your powers to spiral any further. Shango raised an eyebrow. Balance, huh? You and your balance. Always meddling. Orunmila smiled faintly. It is my purpose. Amadioha stood, his gaze lingering on Orunmila. What happens now? We return, Orunmila said. There is much to discuss. This battle has revealed much about both of you and what lies ahead. Shango sighed, pushing himself to his feet. Fine, but next time don't interrupt. Orunmila chuckled softly, his tone light but firm. Next time don't force me to. With a wave of his staff, Orunmila summoned a portal, its shimmering surface reflecting the faint glow of Akaru's scarred terrain. One by one the gods stepped through, leaving the battered planet behind. For now the battle was over, but the war was only beginning.